I want to continue with what I started whenever it was. I don't remember when the last time I was up here. I was talking about serving the Lord and following His plan for your life. And we were starting to go through some different traits that are good for us to have in order to serve Him effectively, in order to fulfill what He has called for us to do. And I mentioned them the last time, and I'll go through them again. But we should be available, we should be useful to Him, we should be obedient, and we should be willing. And like I said, that is not an all-inclusive list. There are many other things that you need to do that the Word tells us about, but these are important ones when it comes to serving Him. And last time we got into the first one, which was being available, and I want to recap a little bit on that, and then we'll go a little bit further with that tonight. And we'll see. We'll see if we get to usefulness or not. But if we're going to be available, we cannot be just so preoccupied with everything that is going on in our lives, by all the distractions in our life. We have to make sure that we are making intentional decisions, and they have to be intentional, because if you don't do it, then time with God will just fly out the window very, very quickly and easily. We have to make intentional decisions to spend time with Him each and every day, in order to keep ourselves available to Him, ready to listen to His voice, to hear what He has to say to us, to receive the instructions that He wants to give us concerning our lives. We have to be available to hear all those things and receive all those things. And last time we looked at several different scriptures of different men in the Bible who, how they responded to God when He spoke to them. They all, every single time, every account that we read, they all answered the exact same way. They said, "Here I am. Here I am, Lord." They were ready to hear from the Father. They did not run. They didn't go hide. They weren't too busy working or cooking or whatever, we occupy our time with. They were ready to hear what God had to say. They were ready to receive the instructions that He gave. And, because they made themselves available to Him, He was able to speak to them concerning their lives. He was able to instruct them. He was able to tell them about things that were to come. And we should all be endeavoring to do that too, because we want that guidance in our life. We don't want to be like lost in the wilderness, not knowing right from left, but we want to have that instruction, so we have to make ourselves available to Him too. The last time I had a quote that I wanted to read, and I never got to it, so I'm going to read it now. It's talking about being available. And it says, availability means having an eternal perspective rather than a temporal perspective. It causes us to think less about ourselves and more about God. Some people may not want that. And it think more about let me read that again. It causes us to think less about ourselves and more about God and His purpose for our lives. And it says we can get so caught up in scheduling our lives, in creating our priorities, and living for our plans that we are often unaware of what God is doing. They said we may live Monday through Saturday according to our priorities, and then we'll give God, they said, a slice of our time on Sunday. But being available means adjusting our priorities, our agenda, and our plans to fit God's priorities, to fit God's agenda, and God's plans. It means making personal priorities secondary to God's and others, it adds on. And I thought, that's the truth. We need to do that in our lives. And last time we looked at different things that would help us to become more available to Him. And like I said, one of those things was avoiding distractions. Avoiding those things that preoccupy our time, that cloud our hearing, that consume all of us, and then we don't have that ability to hear from Him like we should. We need to be creating an atmosphere in our lives for easy hearing, because it is not easy to hear from God when you have got chaos and clutter and 1,000,001 things going on. You have to kind of create that atmosphere around you. And when those men of God that we looked at, that's what they did. They were able to respond, "Here I am," because they were laying there in the silence. That's what Samuel was doing. He was laying there in the quiet. He didn't have the TV on. He did not have TikTok, watching videos. He was in silence, and God was able to speak, and He was able to hear. And so we want to do that in our lives, and I think it's kind of interesting because we don't have a problem making ourselves available to all kinds of things. It's in that area of making ourselves available to God where sometimes we slack, and that is not a good thing. And I was thinking, just for instance, we know how to make ourselves available to our kids. you have a kid, you know. You're available to them. When my daughter, if she needs something, if she calls me, I come. If she calls me 501 times, I come. If she is hungry, I feed her. When she was a baby and she needed her diaper changed, I was available to change her diaper. And you could go on and on and on with those things as a parent, but that's what parents do. They will stop what they're doing to meet the need of their kid, to answer their cry, to assist them. We're available to them. And I thought that is how we should be with God. That attentive that if he calls, we come. If he tells us volunteer there, that we'll go volunteer there. If he tells us, he's leading us to go pray, that we go and we do that. We don't just, shirk that one off. Don't feel like going to pray right now, God. We need to go. Like pastor called to another country. If God called, he went. And that's how we're supposed to be. When we make ourselves available to serve God, that's when we step into that further calling that he has for us. That's when we are fulfilling what he has, that plan that he has for our lives. And I wanted to look tonight at something that we can allow to hinder us from being fully available to God, and that is our inability. You might think, I don't have any inabilities. You do, I know you do. We can't be so focused on ourselves that we just, on what we can do in our own power, and in our own might, and in our own strength, that we lose sight of what God can do and what he will do. Because if we're not careful, we can allow maybe our lack of ability, our inability, to hinder and get in the way of our availability to God. And I thought the enemy, he loves to assist with this. He loves to send all kinds of lies or thoughts, things like, oh, I'm not qualified. Oh, I'm not educated. Oh, my gosh, I came from this background. How can God use me? He'll give you all kinds of those crazy thoughts. But the truth is, God can use you. He wants to use you. He wants to use your life. He wants to make your life a testimony for his goodness. And I like what I heard somebody say. They said, God, he does not ask about our ability or our inability, but our availability. And I thought that is so true. God doesn't care what you can and cannot do. He doesn't concern himself with your abilities, because I think if he was concerned with that, he'd be up in heaven and he'd be like, okay, they can't part a sea. They can't heal anybody. They can't raise the dead. What are they good for? God doesn't care about that. He's very aware of our insufficiencies. He's very aware of what we cannot do. And in spite of all that, he still wants to use us. He knows that we in ourselves are nothing. And even the brightest, the smartest, the most educated and talented of people you can think, the Elon Musks or the Bill Gates of the world, even they are insufficient compared to God. And that's because, if you remember, I don't know who said it, if it was pastor or whoever, but they said he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Well, that's what God does. And each of us is called to serve him, maybe in different capacities, but we all have that calling on our life. Nobody's exempt from this. As much as you may try to run like Jonah, you are not exempt from it. In the first place, if you'll go ahead and go to Exodus 4:10, we're going to look at somebody who struggled with their lack of ability. And this is the account of Moses. He's at the burning bush, and the Lord's talking to him about going back to Egypt to talk to Pharaoh. This is Exodus chapter 4, verse 10. It says, Then Moses said to the Lord, Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither recently, nor in the times past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech, and I am slow of tongue. And the Lord said to him, Who made man's mouth? Or who makes him mute or deaf, or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now he said, Go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth, and I'll teach you what you are to say. But he said, Please, Lord, now send the message by whomever you will, basically, but not me. Verse 14, it says, Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, Is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently, and moreover, behold, he's coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And you are to speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and his mouth, and I will teach you what you are to do. Moreover, he will speak for you to the people. He will be as a mouth for you, and you will be as a God to him. You shall take in your hand this staff which, and he says, to perform these many signs. So I thought, there's Moses, And he's sitting there basically telling the Lord, I'm not eloquent. I cannot do this. Call somebody else to the task. We all have felt like that at times, right? And the Lord, he didn't really appreciate Moses' concerns. He did not, he didn't like that he was hesitating about doing what he said. Oh, gee, I think, did Moses think he was surprising God? I'm slow of speech. Well, gee, Moses, thanks for telling me. Go back and watch your father-in-law's sheep. You're all done with my work. No, God's not dumb. He's not going to let you off the hook just because you don't feel like you can do it. Lord wasn't happy with Moses, and he won't be happy with you if you do things like that. And I thought what Moses' problem is he was consuming himself with what he could do, with his abilities, and he wasn't focused on what God's plan or God's call was. And that is what selfishness does. Selfishness, that is to lack consideration for others. That's what the dictionary says. So he wasn't considering the Lord's plan. He was thinking about himself. He was thinking about his shortcomings, and that did not please God. And you could say selfishness has no part in availability. God's not going to be able to use you if you're being selfish. So you have to learn to give up what you think and how you feel and, what your emotions are saying, and just go and obey God, no matter, if you think you're sufficient or not. Maybe your problem is you think you're sufficient, and God's like, oh, simmer down over there. You ain't so hot. But Lord, there, he didn't need Moses to be sufficient in himself. He just wanted him to be available to be used. And by all those excuses he kept giving, it was kind of like telling the Lord, well, I'm not available to be used because I'm not good enough, God. Don't you know that? All Moses was looking at was shortcomings and inabilities, and the Lord was, I'm not concerned with that. He just wanted somebody to be available for use, somebody that he could depend on. And if you think about it, really, God, he can take our nothing and make something out of it. And that is what the Lord was ready to do for Moses. And I like verse 11. I like what he says in there. I'll read it again. He said, the Lord said, who made man's mouth? Who makes him mute? Who makes him deaf? He said, is it not I, the Lord? And he says, I'll be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you are to say. So he's like, I made your mouth, you dumb man. I'm going to be with that mouth. I'll teach you what you need to say. I'll lead you. I'll guide you. And for all of us, that is exactly the truth. He made us, from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, he made you. And if you don't think you can do something, that is a lie from the enemy. He's going to enable you to do it. If God is asking you to move in an area of your life or to do something for him, it is not a question of, will you have the ability to do it? You don't. You're not able in yourself. You couldn't climb stairs if you wanted to, if he didn't make your heart beat, so you're not all that. But it's never a question of ability. Never, ever, ever. It is always a question of availability. God will make something out of that nothing. He can he can bring things into existence that are not there. So no matter what you feel like you can or cannot do, don't worry about that. Just be available for him. Because if he wasn't backing us, we would all be flopping anyways. We rely on him, and he will lift us up. He'll hold us. He will enable us. And I like what Hebrews says. We're going to go there next, but it talks about he equips us. Go to Hebrews 13, verse 20. Hebrews 13:20, it says, now the God of peace, who brought you up from the dead and the great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the eternal covenant, even Jesus our Lord, equip you in every good thing to do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory forever and ever. So God's the one who's going to equip you in everything to do his will. You don't equip yourself. He's the one who does the equipping. And he's not going to equip you to do your own will. It specifically says he's going to equip you to do his will. So don't go out and think that God's going to just be assisting you in your plan for your life. He's got a specific plan for you that he will equip you in. And the dictionary, it defines equip as to supply with the necessary items for a particular purpose. And the Greek word, it means to complete or to prepare. And I thought in the natural, like a teacher would do. A teacher will equip students with knowledge. They will prepare them with the information that they need in order to pass a test. They don't just sit there silent in the room all semester long and then on test day plop that exam down in front of them and be like, okay, you pass it. I didn't give you anything all semester, but you better pass. That's ridiculous. They equip their students. They give them that information that they need. They give it through lessons, instructions, through homework, through activities, and on and on. And so they do that so that when test time comes, they have the information that they need. They're well equipped to accomplish or to prepare for that purpose of passing the exam. And in our lives, God, He's going to supply us with the necessary things that we need in order to fulfill the call and the purpose that He has placed upon us. He's not going to call you to something and then leave you ill-equipped or unequipped to do it. And, like I said, you don't have to worry about being sufficient in yourself. That's never going to happen. He will make you sufficient in Him. But just like in a classroom, the students have a part to play. They have to actually show up to class. And if they show up to class, they're available to hear, they're available to learn, and then they're well supplied. They are well able to pass that exam because they've prepared like they should. And I thought in our lives, we have to do that. We have a part to play. Even though in ourselves we might not be sufficient, we can still make ourselves available to God, and we can make ourselves be ready to be used by Him, and He will make up that difference and equip us in everything that we need to carry out that plan that He has for us. It has nothing at all to do with, am I able to do it? It's only about being available for God to work. And the last place you can go, and I'm going to close with this, is Philippians 2:13. And it goes right along with the rest of this. It says, "For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure." That is God. You become available to Him, and let Him work in and through your life, and He will do something with what you have. It might be nothing, maybe it's a little something, but whatever it is, He will use it for Him. He'll use it for His glory if you just be available and let Him do that with your life. And I will pause there. I'll save you.